Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. Today was the Hungarian Grand Prix, and if you slept through it, well, you didn't miss much.
Oh man, do you know what? I was already by about. I was driving back from footy practice this morning, and I had it on, so I was listening to it. I saw the beginning of the race before I left, and then I kind of hot-footed it back. And I'm glad I had the miles to drive to watch the scenery go past, because at least I had something interesting to do for the first half an hour. Once I got home, my brain had already started wandering onto puns that I could use for the episode title this week, and that stuff never comes into my head till after me and you have usually finished recording. I'm waiting for you to upload it to the drive, and I'm like, right, what are we going to call the episode this week? The fact that I was already thinking about this by about lap 35. We'll do our best to make it sound interesting. If you haven't seen it and you use us as your way of kind of filling in the blanks if you missed a race, well, we'll try. We'll try to make it more exciting than the actual race was.
Oh
Oh,
boy.
just by the way, one pun that I absolutely cannot squeeze in, and I don't know how to do it, but I wish I could. So you know the river in Budapest,
Yes,
which is
I don't know the name of it.
come on, it's the Danube, right?
Oh,
And
yeah, okay.
or the Danube, sorry.
Yeah.
But the reason I said it like that is because in order for it to fit into, someone took the New York, New York lyrics and it had "Start spreading Danube," but I can't work that into an episode title. Anyway, we should probably talk Formula One.
Well, do you know that there's two cities that make up Budapest? It was Buda and Pest, and they kind of like grew and ended up becoming one.
Wow. I hope we haven't trampled all over Paul's travel facts. I haven't. I've seen it drop through, and I haven't listened to it yet. So
I don't even know if mine's right. Anyhow,
anyway,
yeah.
let's. So we got news and social. We've
Video
got
vault will
Brian's
be
video
fast.
fault, kind of. And then we're trying something new this week. Maybe not the best race to have tried it on, but we're going to give it a go rather than just kind of read our notes out in a kind of play-by-play replay of the race. We're going to try and cover practice and quali a little bit quicker than we normally do. And then we're going to try to divide the race up into three segments, a bit like a good story, a beginning, a middle, and an end. So rather than kind of play by play each lap, but it's been pretty challenging to try to find things to put into those three categories. So we'll see how we get on. We've got Pitlane Paul, and then we've got a Spa preview because we're actually going
Yes.
to go to hopefully a great race next week.
You know what? I'm so happy that we are not going on summer break with this boring, snoozer, slow. I mean, I feel bad. Like a friend of the pod, Paul, was with a friend of ours, and Paul made his friend, this guy Stu, watch the race. And
Today's one.
yeah, his first
Oh,
one, the second one that he's
oh
really watched.
ouch.
I know, and I was apologizing. I'm like, they can't all be winners. That's okay. I'm sure someone enjoyed the race. McLaren fans?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, maybe they must have done. Actually, we'll get
We'll
there.
get
So
there.
let's dive into again quite a small news and social this week. So Latifi is not going to be angling for trundling around at the back of the F1 grid anytime soon. He is going back to school. He has applied for and been accepted into the London Business School
That's
to
awesome.
go and do his MBA. That's amazing.
That is
I
amazing. I
mean,
love
it's a
this.
yeah. I things I didn't expect to have seen from an F1 driver is like, yeah, I'm not really going to look for another seat. I'm going to go and become an MBA in business. Fair play.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good luck to Nikki, and I hope he has a great time. I enjoyed my MBA. I'm sure he'll have even more fun because he probably won't have that rush to get a job as he leaves. He'll have his choices. So good on him. I'm gonna let you do this next one because this was a little crazy again with some of the changes at Alpine, and it's like 2 weeks in a row. So I'll let you do this one.
Oh yeah, I felt I'm going to write a strongly worded letter to Alpine because there we are asking Pitlane Paul when we had him on the show last week to talk us through how the dynamic changing at Alpine might affect Otmar because Otmar was going to have a new boss. He wasn't going to be reporting directly to Laurent Rossi anymore, um, who was the CEO, and he was being now reporting to someone else. But as it turns out, no one's going to report to Laurent Rossi anymore because they got rid of him as well. And he's going to be replaced by Renault executive Philippe. I'm going to say Krief.
Sure.
Krief. It's Krief just sounds like it's not very French if I say it like
Yeah,
that.
that
Philippe,
can't.
he's got to be French, right? And he's from Renault, so we're going to go Philippe Krief. There
That
we go.
sounds
We'll go
about
for
right.
that.
And then Nick DeVries put what I thought was an excellent and amazing message out on Instagram, stepping back from it, thanking everybody. It felt honest. It felt like the guy wrote it.
Yeah.
He felt sad. He had a chance to have his dream kind of smashed. But then, as you pointed out, the pinned post is where is the recent
Broke
one
my
where
heart.
the dream came true. I'm like, oh my god, that happened so fast.
Well, it is. He's put this post out and said he's going to step away from social media, like you said, but he hasn't made it his pinned post. So he's left a certain pin post there, which is his first when he got his seat, and it says "Dream come true." Been going for this for years. Can't wait to get started. And you look at it and think,
I know.
oh, poor Nick De Vries. To round off the week's news, Kevin Magnussen, he owes his wife a favor. She's done some great time in there to deliver their child in an off week, so that it wasn't a race weekend, so he would miss it. So she's done very well there. But
Yeah,
I'm gonna let you put the notes on this as well, Brian. The name is interesting.
curious. Yeah, Agnes Magnuson. You can't do that. Did they not put it? Did they not say the whole thing? Like, Agnes is a beautiful name.
It is
Magnuson or Magnuson, however you'd like to pronounce the last name, if you're in Canada or not, is a great last name. But when you put the two together, Agnes Magnus.
So we used to have a quiz show in the UK called Mastermind, and the guy that presented it, his last name was Magnuson, and his first name was Magnus.
Really?
Yeah,
What did you remember?
maybe it's a thing they do. I don't know.
What do you remember? The world's strongest man, Magnus Vermagnuson.
Yeah, because I. Oh, now I'm going to mess up this, but it's somewhere in the Scandinavian, and I'm sure Denmark must do it as well. But the Magnus son, it means son of Magnus, doesn't it? Don't they structure their last name to be kind of? Anyway, let's move on before I kind of get a barrage of hate mail from Scandinavian countries saying what the hell are you talking about.
Well, it is now time to open the door to Brian's video vault. And at the same time, it is time to close the door to Brian's video vault. Sorry, guys. This week has been a little bit crazy for me, and actually a week and a half been on the road the whole time, and so I didn't get a chance to watch any videos, and I haven't been on the Discord. A big mea culpa to the Discord crew. I haven't been there. I'm very sorry. Lee, I actually saw a note come through on my notifications just recently that you have a better sound for the Open. I will check it out this coming week. And if you're not on the Discord, apparently like I haven't been for the last week, you guys should all join. It's a wonderful place. It is a lot of fun, and I can't wait to get logged back in tomorrow as regular.
You need to
Regular
catch up on the
resumed.
question of the day.
Yeah,
you need to catch up on the question of the day stuff. Andy's been doing a great job doing some very challenging questions, and bizarrely, I seem to be leading the way at the moment. So, well, I'm getting caught by Nimrod. It's just luck. It's just like accidental genius, and then I got lucky on a couple of them where I kind of guessed and they were right. So
I think Andy's
I am
just
going to get
giving
caught
you.
and passed soon.
He's just being nice. There's no way.
No, he's not.
All
No,
right.
he's not. Anyway, so race weekend arrived, and I got to be honest, I went into it almost looking back on the words from last week where we'd done the preview, and I was saying to Paul, it's called Monaco without
Yes,
barriers.
you said that
And I was
last
like-
week. Yes.
And I was like, I don't remember it being a boring race. And then Paul went, yeah, it's kind of got that reputation. And yeah, talk about me getting slapped in the face with my own words from last week.
I thought about that. I thought about that today. I actually enjoyed quali, and I know we'll get there in a second, but practice, the only thing, I hadn't even been on Twitter in a week, and I opened it up right before work, and I see a Red Bull in the tires, and I'm like, oh, it can't be Checo. I mean, it's got to be Checo, but it can't be Checo. The guy's like never made it to Q3 since, this calendar year. He wouldn't do that in practice. And then you're like, that's Checo.
I mean, the main bit from practice, I got three things. Checo bending it into the tires, so he missed all of the first running. In the second running, he basically put a flat spot so big in his tires from locking up. I think it was almost in the same place, I think, and it looked like he was going to go off again, but he just must have stamped on the brakes, thrown the anchor down, flat spot the hell out of that. And I was like, oh, this is not boding well for Checo. But the other thing really was that, and I think Lewis mentioned it, rain saved the new tire format a little bit. So they're trying to do the sustainability thing, and they've got less tires with them at a weekend. And what that really meant was no one really wanted to run on Friday because they didn't want to waste the tires. There was one point when it started drying up and it wasn't wet enough for Inters anymore that Lewis and Max just stayed in the garage. They were like, and they said they were apologizing. Like the commentary team were kind of saying, thankfully it's rained a bit, so people don't mind going burning off the inters because it's not predicted to be wet over the weekend. But if they hadn't, there's a good chance all those people that had tickets for the Friday would have seen little to no running. There's and Lewis had mentioned something that Paul touched on last week about the wet tires and kind of how easily tires just get thrown away at the end of races. I mean,
Right.
there's got to be a way of saving tires. I'm not sure the new format really did it.
Well, let's get into that format in quali. So, I was really excited seeing the softest tires in the range. I'm like, good, we're going to have tire deg. Again, deg is a word in boggle, just for, no? Okay,
No, no.
it's a
And
word.
I'm not sure you're going to see tire deck and quali, really, are you?
But no, for the weekend, the compounds we saw. So
Okay.
I'm thinking this will be great, getting into the weekend with these tires. I was skeptical about this tire rule they put in. And honestly, we both comment on this during quali. Ted's shepherd's pie story was horrendous. I was gonna rip my arm off and beat myself with it, because I could not take any more of him talking about making a shepherd's pie. I even have a tire keychain that I'm holding up for all of YouTube to see right here that I bought off the F1 website, and I hated this tire allocation thing. It just took even more out of a strategy out of quali. And I already thought I would love to go back again, and I know I'm a broken record. Whatever you get into Q3 on is the tire you have to start the race on. I loved the strategic, importance and magnitude of that decision. Now everyone's just running the same darn tires, and the question is, when do you go out? That's literally the only question left. That's it. I thought, and I enjoyed quali. Like, I thought it brought us good stuff. I hated the shepherd's pie story, and I didn't like this
Shepherd's
allocation.
pie. It was just like an analogy overboard. Someone just needed to throw him a lifesaver and reel him in because he just kept persevering with it. And I'm like, and even the other people in the commentary team were just like, oh my god, someone cut the mic, just cut the mic. Let's pretend we've had a mic problem here. But yeah, I mean, so we had the new tire format. They had to run hards, then they had to run mediums, then they have to run softs. I wasn't a fan. Takeaways for me were that nice to see Danny Rick get the AlphaTauri into Q2.
That was amazing.
Which was at the expense of who do we lose in Q1? We lost Albon, Sonoda. Russell got screwed big style on when he went out again because, like you just said, everyone's playing
Right.
like roulette to kind of wait to the last possible minute, and they're doing that silly thing where they're all kind of waiting on the final corner just to get some clear track in front of them, but the people behind are like, I don't want to wait behind you, so I'm going to scoot through. So suddenly,
he
Russell's in traffic.
He left a huge gap between him and Hamilton, and the gentleman's agreement and all that discussion. It was too big of a gap. People had to get across the line, and so Lando went first and just shot past 100 people. And then, like you said, there were other cars shooting in front of George, and it was really George was the stopper in the bottle. And eventually, when Pierre came on the inside of him to get started, it totally screwed him up in the beginning. I mean, it cost he can blame the team as much as he likes, but I think a lot of that was on him in the way that he executed that slowdown to get going. But
Yeah, probably. But again, by being sent out so late, then maybe it was a double whammy. Q2 on the mediums, we lost Sainz, Ocon, Danny Rick, Stroll, and Gasly. Gasly was a victim of track limits.
oh god, track limits. I loved seeing the Alfa Romeos up high in quali. I loved it. Joe and Valtteri, and they're like, well, they have a new power unit. And then they're like, at the same time, the announcer's like, but you don't really use a lot of power at this track. The Alfa Romeo car, I think, suits this kind of track. And we'll talk a little bit about McLaren during the race. But I loved seeing Joe and I loved seeing Valtteri doing their thing out there. Those are two talented guys. It was fun to watch Alfa Romeo near the top of the boards in quali.
Yep. And then we went into Q3. Everyone straps on the softs. And it really looked like not did it just look like it. We did. We had a legitimate three-way battle on our hands. We had Max, we knew was going to be fast. Hamilton was looking feisty, and Lando was going to be was looking quick as well. I really enjoyed. Q1 and Q2 just felt like I don't know, because of that tire choice thing. It almost felt like this forced way of tuning out to get the final 10, so that we could have a shootout on softs, which we would have had anyway because everyone runs softs in quad. So those aside, yeah, I mean, great Q3, loved it.
Yeah, me too. So a couple notes. I think the biggest loser in all this, and for my vote of quali, was.
We haven't got to that part yet, so don't skip ahead to it.
Well, I wanted to get there.
So we haven't got to that.
McLaren with the
So
second row lockout. That was interesting.
that was awesome. So I mean, when Lando came round, I honestly thought he was going to drop it on top. I thought he was going to edge Max out. So Max had gone and put that decent lap in. Max for once wasn't. Is it me? Did he go earlier than he normally does? Doesn't he normally like to leave it till last and
He
come round and
did.
do the big final hurrah?
Well,
Whereas
he
this time he was kind of done quite early, and we were watching everyone else for a change.
and Lewis was coming around last, and he was, as you said, Lando looked like he had a shot at taking pole, and then Lewis comes around, and you're just sitting there staring at the TV screen like, no way this is going to happen. There's no way Lewis is going to make this happen, and then he did. It was amazing. His 104th pole position, 3 thousandths over Max. And can I ask a question? Is this a British thing or a commentary thing? Or is it just the way Sky Sports does it? They keep saying 3 1 thousandths of a second. Like they 47 1 thousandths. No, it's just 47 thousandths. Like why do they always put the
I
one in front of it?
I don't know. It's not a British thing. I don't
Okay.
think it's just
I don't think
commentary
it is
teams
either.
trying to sound. No, I just think they're just trying to sound more intelligent, but I don't really think it works. So that was amazing rush of emotion. Lewis on pole, everything was great. We'd got Max up there in a second row lockout from McLaren. So to summarise before we move into the race, Brian, rather than jumping ahead, other than pole, who's the biggest winner from quali?
McLaren.
Just McLaren all round, yeah.
Yeah. That we debated on this here show over the last couple weeks, especially after Silverstone. You told me that let's not count the chickens yet. You basically said because the problems the McLarens have had were in turns, low speed corners and things we'd see at Hungary. And you were right. We should wait. I was like one of the conductors of their back train. I was very excited. I bought in full,
Oh,
hook, line,
you
and
get
sinker.
so excitable
I
so
do.
early. You
I
do.
do. I am that guy. And I'm like, yes, another team battling, at the top with Mercedes and whoever is for the best of the rest, I'll say. And I would say McLaren was the biggest winner in quali because they have the quali pace, and we'll see it. They had the race pace, but Oscar is acquitting himself quite well.
Well, I mean, you can have your point of view, but what I'm going to say is for me, my biggest winner of quali outside of Lewis is McLaren because they did an amazing job and they look like they're back. No, I hate to agree with you so much, but 100%. I was really worried that this was going to be the one. They downplayed it as well. They were going to go from the highs of last race to this one, sort of like maybe struggling to get into Q3 or something crazy
Right?
like that. No, that was great. So then I'll go first for biggest loser. Um, hmm, biggest loser for me, I think has to be George. I just think, especially when we saw what happened to when we get to the race, I think he missed opportunity today for some decent points. Well, he still did get decent points, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. I agree. So for me, it was a three-way battle between George, Carlos, and Checo. I'm actually going to go with Checo. I'm sorry.
Ooh.
He was ninth. I know he made Q3, but ninth in a car that has won 47,000 races in a row. And he was ninth. Why?
Well, because as we will about to discover, that's not even English, as we will discuss shortly, it was kind of almost there when what Max said at the end of the race in terms of they tuned the car for race day and didn't optimize it for single lap pace. So whereas Max is just a better driver, so got a better grid position out of it. That did seem to hold true. They did seem to be a much better car today than they were yesterday.
100% agreed. It was good race trim for them. But when your teammate is basically on pole and the whole world is shocked that he wasn't on pole for one time, basically that was the joy of quali was someone other than Max stood on the top step of something.
That was the joy of the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. And because of that surprise that people felt that it wasn't Max, Checo still was ninth. I mean, that's my challenge. Yep. That was my problem. But then we get to the race. And next week is Spa. Sorry.
No. Yeah, we could actually do that. But let's be honest. This race and the potential enjoyment of at least the first part of it all came down to. I didn't write it down, but it's measured in maybe 1/1000ths of seconds. And what I'm talking about is the reaction time to the lights when they showed it. Max has been horrendous recently. And despite the fact, they never quite got the words out so that I could go and sound clip it from the broadcast. They kept talking about, oh, and he's on the dirty side. Yeah, finish that sentence. Max is on the
Exactly.
dirty side of the track. I just wanted you to say it so that I could clip it. But
I
no, they
heard
kept
that
saying
too.
he's on the dirty side. I was like, okay, that's close enough. So we've got Max that doesn't start well on the dirty side. This is 100% Lewis into the lead in corner one with maybe a McLaren getting right up there as well. It's going to be epic watching Max try to battle past these guys if they have got the pace. But no, his reaction time was better today. The car bit into the surface much better. He got a good launch, and by the first corner, he got his elbows out and he was away. And at that point, I probably could have turned off and not gone back and watched any rest of it.
I mean, I don't. You could have. You should have. Yeah, agreed. Max did a brilliant job, as we've said. He's actually struggled not just at reaction time; those have actually been every so often pretty good. One of the bigger challenges has been his second phase of the start, where he'll get wheel spin as well. He was on it, and the McLarens were on it, and Max did a great job going into turn one. And as he and Lewis were battling, Oscar and Lando were like, "Thank you very much. I'll take that spot too." And yeah, that was the race. Thanks for joining us on the dirty side this week. Yeah, you know what? Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
go on.
I was gonna say. I mean, like the one thing about the start that we have to hit was Joe's terrible start in fifth.
Yes.
And Valtteri was around him so fast. I actually thought that Joe's car was off. I didn't know what happened. I've never seen anyone get swallowed up by the car behind him that quickly.
I thought Joe had stalled.
I thought maybe
that straight view down the line
yeah.
when like Valtteri had to basically swerve and take evasive action to not
Yes.
collect the back of his teammate.
Yeah, totally. But that's what caused. Isn't that basically what caused the kerfuffle? Because then he
think
broke
so.
late, and then kind of pushed people into people. And I think the Alpines were just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Is basically what it looked
The
like.
Alpines seemed to come around like a pincer maneuver. They came around, they came back together again. And you're right. I think somebody got a little push in the back, and it might have been Joe trying to recover from his bad start.
I
Danny
think it
Rick
was
got
Joe.
caught up in it.
I think Joe hit Danny Rick and pushed him into the Alpines. One of the Alpines, at least. I
okay.
think.
I mean, I know all of those guys and Valtteri all kind of got caught up in that. So we often say that Valtteri, if he didn't have any bad luck, he wouldn't have any luck at all. And just seemed to mess with the strategy. Both Alpines were out. Ocon. I mean, it said that was enough impact to snap his seat in two. It didn't.
Yeah,
I know he went up in the air, but it didn't look that violent on TV. I mean, I guess you're that low to the ground. You don't have to get too far off the ground in one of those things for it to hurt on the way back
broke
down
his seat
again.
in two, and then he was at the medical center with having his back checked out, which is
But,
not good. I hope he's all right, of course. And then, yeah, I mean, we had Carlos on soft tires out there behind Leclerc, unable to really catch him or do anything about it. The Ferrari race, once again, just was witness protection. They finished right alongside each other in a nothing burger. I mean, do we even really see that? One, they had a bad pit stop. That's the only thing I can talk about from the Ferrari aspect of the race.
we'll get to them towards the end, and I think, and if you're done with talking about the start, I think we just fast forward to the middle now, where things for a little bit got kind of interesting. But this is me really scraping the barrel. Was first round of pit stops. We at least got some undercut potential, and we got some excitement of will they, won't they come out ahead of them. And we had some phenomenal pit stops today as well. We had some ridiculously quick ones.
Yeah, we had a 1.9 second one along the way. I mean,
1.9. How do you even do that?
I don't know. I was actually thinking about it. Like when they showed it, I'm like, I don't even think that's possible. I mean, it just was wild.
And Danny Rick, actually, I thought he's done pretty well this weekend. Maybe even more than pretty well. Maybe I'm selling him short there. All the eyes were on him. He had to do something and not trundle around at the back in 20th because everyone's looking for him to do better than Nick De Vries would have done. He did well in quali. I think I'm right in saying that was the best quali performance of AlphaTauri this year. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it.
All right, Rob stats.
Sure I could have made that up. And then in the race, I kind of think he used some of his experience. The commentators at first were kind of going, "Oh my God, he's coming in after 11 laps of being on a hard tire. What the hell's going on?" Apparently, it was him. He made the call. I think it was Logan Sargent he couldn't get past, and was just losing time. So he's like, "Let's just swap the strategy up and let's just do this instead." I thought he did pretty well today out there for the first race back.
Well, and he got, like you said, tangled up in the start at the beginning, the issue there. He was last, and then he ended up finishing 13th again. So he worked his way back to 13th.
And ahead of his teammates, so,
yes,
which is the important one.
Totally. And it's one of those things where, like, you know, you can say started 13th, finished 13th. Oh, must have been an uneventful race. Actually, the opposite.
Yeah, true. And we had, you're right. We had the awful stop for Charles. He came in and they just decided, the rear left guy. He was gone on vacation. He wasn't there.
the,
Nah,
the gun
it
didn't
was
work. He had to go to
the
the
gun
backup
didn't work.
gun.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
had to go to the backup gun. I'm jesting. It wasn't his fault. So that just like kind
Yeah.
of scuppered that one.
My buddy,
Um,
rear left, Jackman. Don't make fun of him. Uh,
is he the 100 seconds of DRS guest next week?
if I can get off my hands and get some people scheduled, I'm looking at you, Laura. You're up soon. I got to get that happening. Okay, but no, again, pit stops happened. The undercut was valuable. I don't know how Lando undercut Piastri. He was
Made up some phenomenal amount of time on
I
that.
know. I know, but that's when we learned the power of the undercut with these tires and this track and the way it was rubbering in and the way the degradation, full word for Boggle, would have affected the tires. But Piastri was leading, and so shouldn't he have had strategy preference? And Lando
Yeah,
went first and then came out ahead of Piastri. Piastri kind of got screwed.
yeah, I agree. I always thought it was the car that's in front would
Me
get the
too.
pull, but eh.
And he didn't complain
um,
about it. Again, if I was way off, I thought Piastri would be all right, but he's been really really having a good season.
he has, and he does seem like when we were doing our draft for the dirty side last week with Paul. Um, we were kind of talking about that team dynamic about, could you put two alphas together or will they
Right.
tear the team apart? That seems to be another makeup to Oscar, that he just seems like a really good wingman. Now, I know he's in his rookie year, so he can't come in straight away, straight out the gate going, I'm the big I am, I need to be number one. But on the flip side, he just seems to be doing a really good number two job.
Well,
Little wink to camera.
that'll be the sound clip of the week.
And then not a lot really happened. I mean, Charles, not enough to get a 9.3 second stop, decides that he needs to speed in the pit lane on his next time in. How's that even possible?
I don't know. I mean,
I
I
just
don't know. I mean, I know, but I don't know. And he's frustrated and he's coming in hot because he's having a bad race and he's trying to make up seconds everywhere he can. And he just starts sliding at the pit lane limiter as he puts his pit lane limiter on and the purple light goes on and he's sliding way too fast across the line, speeding. See you later, alligator. Cost him a position at the end. Anyway.
And what I was disappointed about at this point is that like literally nothing was happening. As in, we didn't even really have any kind of tussles going on. There was no, everything was kind of spread out. Any overtaking was really being done through the pit lane. Um, yeah, a couple of nice passes, but I don't know. Just it, did it feel that everybody was on a tire management program today, that no one wanted to push it? We got Lewis being told to lift and coast because his car's too hot.
Yeah, okay. And then the end of the race. Can we go to the end, the last section, the
Oh
end?
wow! I throw out big hook with tire bait on it, expecting the great white sap to bite, and you don't even want to talk about tires. My gosh, today's race has really destroyed you, hasn't it?
It was so boring. So boring. This race was my note. Man, tires didn't. It didn't. The tire strategies really didn't matter because no one was battling anybody until apparently, and I'll agree with the commentators. I don't often take what they say at face value, but the Mercedes did come alive, and Checo was battling people, and he did have his elbows out. He was a much
Yep.
better driver on Sunday. Whenever he had
If
to overtake anyone, he overtook them. There was no question. He's like, "This is my position. You can get the hell off the track," is what Checo basically said many times.
and there were a lot of good overtakes in that. If we could take the last, I think the graphic came up and said 10 laps left when no, that's doing a disservice. That was when Checo was on the hunt with Lando and trying to, could he go after second place? So before that, like you say, Checo's all of a sudden come alive and is now starting to sway through people. I think it was it Science that he got really kind of got the elbows out when he went up the inside and or
And
was
then
it Lewis? I
Oscar,
can't remember.
he had
And
one with
Oscar as well. So,
Oscar. He pushed him off the
so
track a little bit, but it was clean.
absolutely,
It
yeah,
was
absolutely on a charge. I'm kind of thinking, do you know what, Checo? This is what you need to be doing this weekend because you've got all that publicity of Danny Rick rocking back up at AlphaTauri and everybody going, yeah, not long till he's in your chair, Checo. And I thought, this is Checo's drive to second. He's absolutely on a mission now.
yes.
And at the same time, was at the same time that I think the 10-lap countdown came on, Mercedes flipped some special switch that they hadn't pressed all race to go turbo power. Knight Rider Super Pursuit mode was enabled on there, and suddenly George and Lewis started getting racy. The last 10 laps actually wasn't too bad for that because we had, well, again, this is where I think Ferrari screwed up again. Maybe commentators hinted at it, right? Carlos was holding 5.3 seconds behind Charles, and they said, do you think he's not getting into the five? They've told him to hold station outside the five so that the penalty doesn't cost Charles anything. I don't know if they did or they didn't, but what it did do was it painted a bullseye on the back of Sainz's car that George was more than happy to accept, got him really well, and then really they were saying, oh, can he get within the 5 second window?
He was there in
easily.
2 laps. He was there in a lap or two. He was within 5 seconds and took that spot to finish 6th, which is a great drive for George.
What happened to Checo at the back markers? So he's eating the time between him and Lando. You can watch it, time falling away. Lando's getting all arsy about people. How dare they be at the back, not moving out of the way? I thought, that's where you were 4 races ago, Sonny Jim.
Totally.
So it came all the way down to something like 3.1 seconds. And then Lando made those 3 back markers, or 2 back markers, however many it was. And then Checo suddenly forgot how to race and just sort of settled in behind one of the back markers. I'm like, no, that blue flag means you can go past him.
You're supposed to pass them now and continue your pursuit of Lando. He must have felt like, oh, race is over. This is the parade lap at the end. We're done. Like, I didn't get that. I don't know what happened to his pace there. Maybe something was going on in the car. Maybe he had to pee. I have no idea.
Maybe it was Deg. Maybe he used them all up trying to chase Lando. So at which point now that's blood in the water for Hamilton. And suddenly the race was just maybe 2 laps too short.
Yeah, it was a couple. It was a second and a half. So it was a couple laps, I think, too short for us.
Because he'd taken it from something like 4.8 down to 1.2 by the final lap. Commentators are trying to dress it up. Oh, and here comes Hamilton. Yeah, this is the final corner. Nothing is happening here.
Valtteri and Alex had a good battle. We kept seeing pieces of over those laps as well. So you know what? Look at us. We found some exciting stuff in this race.
The last 10 was not too bad. But having said that, just like the actual race, even those 2 hunts, the Checo on the hunt with Lando and then Hamilton on the hunt with Checo, both kind of fizzled out. Nothing really came of them.
Nope. No. And then watching the podium, a couple notes from the podium celebration. One is, the big Ferrari champagne bottles that they have there, and Ferrari sponsors the podium, and it's a different Ferrari, I'm assuming. And they have the big Ferrari logo on the podiums. I'm thinking that's the last time we'll see Ferrari on a podium is on the champagne bottles for a while.
Ouch.
They and Aston Martin shot their entire upgrade budget getting early in the year. They're going backwards.
Well, so again, twice in a podcast, I'm gonna have to agree with you. So last week, you were kind of banging your Aston Martin our toast drum, and I was like, well, hang on a minute, one race. A bit like the whole McLaren are back, baby. You like to go early on these things, okay?
I do.
You've been right on both. You've been right on both here.
I was horrendously wrong saying Alpine would be coming around the corner. So I got one. I get it wrong too.
True. You do throw a lot of them out there and hope that some of them come in, right? So,
100% right, 90% of the time. No, not even that high.
So I look at Aston Martin. I'm like, well, okay. The last track didn't suit them. They're coming back to somewhere now that, in theory, does. Well, it didn't, did it?
No. Not even a little bit. 9th and 10th.
Well, I mean, double points, but yeah, I think you're right. I think they've been caught and passed by others with their upgrades. So.
Yeah, and to me, the cars that look alive, at least over the last couple races, the Williams is not quite as fast as I was expecting it to be after that practice session in Silverstone. But I mean, you got to look at the McLarens and the Mercedes and say there's battles here. These guys are fighting with, to me, it's Max. And then it's Checo, McLaren, and Mercedes for the next tier. And then it's Ferrari and Aston Martin in the they should be doing better battle, firmly in the middle. And then you've got, take your pick, Williams, Alfa Romeo, Haas, ahead of AlphaTauri.
Actually, let's just spend a second on Haas.
Let's do it, please.
They are awful at the moment.
Yes.
Like they're just trundling around doing nothing. We get this bizarre thing where Hulkenberg can throw it up there in a one lapper in
He,
quali and put it somewhere up high, and
I know.
then he put it in reverse for the rest of the
Unbelievable.
race.
And I don't understand this quality thing with Hulkenberg. By the way, the hair, don't do that again, Nico. That you look like a Q-tip. And I'm not like I'm one to talk about hair, but come on, bro. That was a bad job. So he has really got some quality game. I don't remember that about him from the years before, and I was pretty down on Haas taking him. Not necessarily over Schumacher, but over other people, other drivers they could have gone after. And I was pretty down on bringing Hulkenberg back. I shouldn't have been, because he at least brings something to quali. The car may stink. Magnussen has been nowhere this season.
What
in that
points
car.
do you win on Saturday by sticking it up in fourth or fifth and then just
Right.
going backwards on a Sunday? I mean, I still think there are very talented drivers out there, like Paul was on about last week about F2 drivers and all
Yeah.
these lot. I
Oh,
think I hate to say about K-Mag as well because I think he's great.
I do
But
too.
I just think the two of them are just taking the paycheck at the moment.
Oh,
They just don't see many. Ugh, I don't
I don't
know.
know.
There's just nothing in that team at the moment.
I know. I agree. It's disappointing. It is disappointing. But it is looking like, though, I was right on the Aston Martin thing. They've been passed. They came out of the gates hot. Good on them. Good design. And whatever they've been throwing at it recently hasn't made a dent, and the other teams are passing them. There were a lot of upgrades coming out this weekend too, and you saw some of them worked, some of them didn't. But I don't know. Like it's the Ferrari and Aston Martin battle is basically for a tiny bit of to be a little bit relevant.
Yeah, it's not for podium battle, that's for sure. Talking of podiums, um,
Yes, back
the
to the podium.
podium, back to the podium. The win was the 12th in a row for Red Bull, so well done to them. I can't remember what it was, but it's 7 in a row for
Yes.
Max. So he equaled Rosberg because Rosberg was interviewing him, right? And said,
Yeah,
"How
I
many
got
have
some
you got?" And he
stats on
said
this.
7.
I got
Okay,
some
we'll come back
stats
to that
on
later.
it. Yeah.
So my favorite part of the entire weekend, other than Lewis getting pole, was the podium celebration
Yes.
with Lando
Doing his thing. He
doing his
loves to do this.
champagne
I don't know why he does this. We
spike or
talk. I
whatever it
don't.
is.
Yeah.
No,
Go.
and
Keep, I thought saw this too. This is great.
I think everybody saw it. It went around like there's about a gazillion camera angles as well if you go on Twitter. So he does this thing called the champagne spike. If you've seen it, so rather than just shaking the bottle and putting his finger over the hole and spraying it, he slams it down on any kind of hard surface he can so he can make a champagne spike. Which I've got to be honest, last race, Lewis had a bit of champagne spike envy because he was trying to replicate it. Because if you saw him, he went over to the top step and he banged his and nothing happened, and he kind of looked at his bottom and was like, "Oh."
I didn't
Anyway,
see that.
Lando's got the technique down to a T. This thing shoots in the air, but he slams it into the top step so hard. Max's porcelain, or what looked like porcelain trophy, has a wobble and falls off.
And
And a bit
breaks.
like, yeah, breaks. I was going to say like Humpty Dumpty. It fell off and broke into pieces. And then Lando just kind of tries to do that good old school child thing of, wasn't me, move along as if it was always like that. And he just sort of looks at it and then goes about his business. Yeah, that was the most exciting thing of the race.
Yeah. I. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
come on, we've got to do our King of the Pits and the Pits.
King of the pits and the pits before stats, huh? Oh boy, this is a hard one. I would say you go first.
I was going to go first on the Pits.
Go for it.
Hungary.
Oh wow,
The race.
And didn't
the
they
whole thing.
Wait, didn't they
Stunk the
also
place
announce they extended the race
Oh,
until like
God.
32 or something like that?
2032 or 32 more years? Please say 2032.
2030 doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, you know what? That's a good call. Can I agree with you? Look at us agreeing on stuff.
I know.
I actually at one point thought I started seeing blue, white, and red stripes around the track. I thought we were at Paul Ricard again for a second. It was so boring. I know the tracks are completely different and they're not at all related. And one's a concrete jungle, and this is in the woods, and it's a go-kart track, and it's little, and there's grass as opposed to Circuit Paul Ricard. But God, I'll agree with you. It was just a bad race. And now we know for next year it is Monaco without the walls. So we just need to be prepared.
And then I'd rather have Monaco because at least it got the glitz and the glamour and some of
yeah.
the kind of history around it. This is just a bit of a, oh dear. So I'll let you crown King of the Pits this week.
Man, King of the Pits. I mean, it's Adrian Newey. I don't know. He made the car that took off into the sunset. Um, I'm gonna have to say Lando. I'm just
Yeah,
gonna have to say Lando.
cool.
I mean, he did so well through quali and the race. He raced beautifully, and his undercut, which again I think kind of screwed Oscar. But and he didn't. I mean, he didn't do it. The team did that. But I'm giving it to Lando. It was my king of the pits.
Rise King Lando of Norris.
You,
Um,
what do you got for king of the
no,
pits?
I'd agree. Again, I mean, you see, this is what happens when the race isn't that spicy and there's not too many talking points. Me and you agree too much, which is just horrible.
I
So,
know.
what do you want to do? Do you want to stat it, or do you want to pit lane Paul it first?
Let's do some sap stats, and then we'll close the weekend with Paul before we look at Spa. So I unfortunately I've been sitting here. The toughest decision has been what music to use. I can't use Slap House. Slap House is too good for this kind of race. Sorry. I can't even use the mariachi because that's too special for this kind of race. So I think I'm just going to go back to the old fashioned how we started this thing with this Sap Stats Hungarian GP edition. Okay. You always say I need more enthusiasm. That was as much as I could
Not
muster
today.
after that
Yeah, I forgiven.
turd sandwich. Oh, sorry. So Red Bull claimed a record-breaking 12th consecutive win, which the commentators said 12 consecutive times over 12 laps. But they broke McLaren's 1988 record, and then a Sean Kelly stat because we're in this weird like couple hours after the race situation, so we have some info, but we don't have fantasy. Red Bull scored their 250th podium finish today, which is a lot of podiums. Verstappen, as you already referenced, Verstappen became the 5th driver in history to win 7 consecutive races with Ascari, Schumacher, Vettel, and Nico. And as you said, Nico Rosberg was interviewing him, and so
He told him to stop. Please stop.
Yeah. Here's another Sean Kelly. Verstappen led start to finish for the 11th time in his career today, tying him with Sir Jackie Stewart and Michael Schumacher.
So
Interesting.
I know this is pedantic, but
He didn't actually
if you
lead
don't,
start to finish because he was not first when they went out. Is that what you're going to say?
well, he wasn't on pole, so how can he? How can he? I guess
I
it's
thought the same thing.
it means, I guess, who was in the lead by the end of lap one is the
Correct.
first time they go over the lap counter, right? But for me,
I
that
think
just
that's
feels
how it
like a bit
works.
of an artificial stat.
I agree 100%. I was thinking the same
Oh
thing.
God, what's going on? We're
I know.
agreeing far too
Crossing the
much.
streams. I would actually be curious for the folks listening, would you consider that leading the race? Like, because he was clearly not first when they took off from the start finish line.
Yeah.
So I guess I would love listeners' thoughts. But anyhow, we count by laps apparently, and he was ahead at the end of lap one, and really far ahead, and then just sailed off into the distance. Anyway, his 33-second winning margin was the largest, and we heard this on the TV a lot since Lewis Hamilton's at the 2021 Russian Grand Prix. I actually was getting a variety of text messages from those my friends who were watching for the first time. He said, again, largest margin of victory in the modern era. Apparently, Hamilton won in Silverstone by 67 seconds in 2008. And then they said, I think Max will get to that margin at some point this season. So some of the newer fans, a little down on this one with the margin of victory and the lack of battles. Anyhow.
So on that one, just before you move on to the next stat, did that stat bite me in the ass big time, right? Because for the first however many laps of the race, Lando wasn't letting Max disappear off into the distance. It kind of got up to about 4 seconds, and it kind of stayed 4 seconds for a long time. So I ridiculously optimistically turned to my son and said, "Do you know what? This could show that these big, stupid, huge gaps that Max has been able to disappear off into the sunset might be a thing of the past. And if McLaren can keep chipping away at this, maybe we're going to have a race in our hands soon." Fast forward an hour and a half, biggest winning margin like since forever. So it's like, yeah, thanks, Max.
Yeah. Lando was second for the second race in a row. Again, we heard this on the commentary. Second for the second race in a row. He's never had consecutive podiums before in his F1 career, and that's awesome. And I don't see him stopping. With this car and his talent, I think he could fight for podiums now pretty regularly until upgrades around him take him out of that position. But I was excited to see that. With his P4, Hamilton took his 6th top 4 finish in the last 9 races. That's an amazing stat. In 9 races, he's been in the top 4, 6 of those 9 races. Wow. That's pretty good consistency. And George, with his P6, and this is another Sean Kelly one that I'm borrowing, He finished 12 places higher than he started. We already talked about his traffic situation in Q1 and finished starting 18th, and he finished 6th, which we already talked about, how he got there, even though he was 7th behind Charles, but with the penalty. That was his career best in terms of positions gained in a race.
Oh.
There you go. Like I said, that was a Sean Kelly, because I don't know how anyone would ever figure that out outside Sean Kelly. And then finally, Leclerc and Ferrari teammate Carlos Sainz finished 7th and 8th, respectively. They were 9th and 10th last together at the British Grand Prix last week. They were also, as I already mentioned, right in front of the Aston Martins of Fernando and Lance in 9th and 10th. 2 teams, 4 drivers, all kind of grouped together. And both Alpines were out after 2 laps, meaning it's been 2 races in a row that neither of their cars have finished. That's not good. And that is SAP Stats. And now we have the opportunity to hear from Mr. Pitside.
He's Mr. Pitside.
I always want to put like a yeah at the end of it. He's Mr. Pitside. Yeah. Anyway, here's Paul.
Hey now. That's a really short hey now. I'm at the airport. It's all quite noisy actually. The fire alarm's just gone off and they've got this like massive air pump system running through the entire airport, so it sounds like I'm in a wind tunnel. But I mean, just for reference, if anyone wants to know what a wind tunnel sounds like, you can sort of hear it in the background, so I apologise. But I get hassled by Brian and Rob to record these quite quickly after a race. To be honest, post-race, I'll give you a little example of what goes on. So the drivers go into the briefing, like the media interview, should I say, more than briefing. So they go from media, pretty much straight out the car, into the FIA, onto scales, and then out the back, and I have a quick wipe over with a wet towel, a drink of water, and then I tend to then pick up Valtteri, and then we go through to where the media interviews are, and there's lots of fans, so I have to go and like elbow them out the way, which sounds cruel and psychotic, but it's sort of what happens. I then wait for him to finish the media, and I actually had a little sneaky route behind all the hospitality units, because we tend to get a drive. I tend to just try and get Valtteri away from the crowds. And trust me, the last thing they want to do is sit there and sign autographs. I know that breaks your heart and spirits, but I'm just being absolutely honest. So yeah, we tend to get the drivers back to the motorhome. We relax for 5 minutes, and then he heads for debrief with the team. And then during that time, I'm then running around trying to make sure luggage is in the right areas, make sure the car that he's going to the airport in, the plane, so on and so forth, is on time. All these little things which none of you know exists. And then what happens is we realise we've really got to get out there quite quickly, so we have a quite quick departure from the circuit. Maybe an hour and 20 after the race is finished, to be fair, maybe a little bit more, that might be optimistic, but there's actually not a lot of time in that period. In that period is normally where I record this, so when I've seen quite hazy on these interviews, the wind tunnel stopped. There we go. When I've seen quite hazy on these interviews, the actual reason is none other than the fact that I'm sort of just trying to push through it, because Brian and Rob don't understand that I'm actually quite a busy person. So I've managed to get to the airport. The guys are at the terminal. They should be flying out soon. They're from the private terminal back to Nice. I'm on the London flight later on. And that's pretty much Budapest done, so I'll see you next week. No, not really. Okay, the race. Was it good? Was it bad? Friday, yeah. Saturday, I actually really liked the new qualifying. I thought that was quite good. It caused a few surprises.
What?
Will teams catch up with it and do better things with it, potentially? But as a trial run, I actually thought it was quite good. It caused a few small surprises. Purely us at Alfa Romeo or Valtteri, we had a pretty, to see Zhou at the top after quali 1 was impressive. To finish with 2 cars in the top 10, considering where we've been, was really good and promising. So obviously it's easy to say yes when it goes your way in qualifying and you like these things, but I actually liked it. I think F1 needs to sort of mix these things up and try and make it a little bit more, I won't say jeopardy, but I think you know what I mean. Try and make it a bit more of a challenge. So anyway, we're gonna move on to the race. The race is actually quite good. There's a lot going on actually. There was To be honest, the DRS zone's a little boring because you get the main straight and then you have from turn 1 to turn 2, which is only a short little stub, but it's definitely not enough to. I'm not going to say get a good race, but I think you know what I mean. It's a bit, you're always going to overtake right at the end of the start, finish straight, but there's no real then defence for the other driver to fight back. I think they touched on it on a commentary, and I think it's a very good point, but I don't know how you stop that, and I sort of agree with Brundle a little bit, where it's just, that's horses for courses. Max got the lead, drove away. It's getting a bit boring. Fair play to Red Bull. I'm not jealous of, I'm not jealous of them because we did it with Mark, and it is what happens. But they've just done a great job. So there's no complaints. Sergio, I thought, was the star of the day. I thought Perez answered a lot of critics. I think he's been pretty harshly treated. So I got no issue with him fighting back through. That was good to see. And the McLaren, that looks the real deal, that car, all of a sudden. It looks like they've unlocked that and found something good, and I think there's going to be a lot more podiums to come. I think Oscar was slightly unlucky. I don't agree with the first pit stop with Lando boxing first. I almost thought that was quite... but yeah, I think you know what I mean. I actually thought that was quite whatever. Harsh is the word I should be looking for. And then really, going backwards on Alpine, I mean, cool, yeah. It was sort of triggered by Zhou, had a terrible start. And that happens at turn 1. It was just so unfortunate. It was both of those guys, and it's their second double DNF. And I think on the interview we had last week, I did touch on the fact there's not a lot of DNFs in this sport now. And, for one team to have 2 DNFs in 2 races that's a shocker for them. And sadly, it's not really their fault. I mean, you even think back to Australia a couple of years ago, last year, might have been this year.
This year.
Was it this year? Yes, it was this year. Of course it was. Amazing how time flies. This year, when they had the incident with their cars both crashing out, I do feel sorry for them a little bit. They seem to always be wrong place, wrong time. But going back down, it was as it was. Lewis did well in pole position. Fantastic to see them back. I think Lewis was just so good, and he's so good around the circuit. He wasn't really going to win the race. It was always going to be Max, but it did make it good. It did make it good. See, a bit of fighting, a few drivers coming back through. George, Sergio, and yeah, all in all, it was a decent race. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not too, it's one of those. I'm not going to jump up and down and celebrate too much. I'm also not going to say it was terrible. We go to probably the best track on the calendar next, and that is Spa. That will be fantastic. It's always great to go there. The weather's unpredictable, just as unpredictable as the ability for Rob to finish a beer, and I am going to keep that going all year. And I realise I've been over 6 minutes on this, so I apologise. I'm going to hand you back over to the guys, and yeah, London, Belgium, summer break, and then I'm over in Denver where you find people riding a bike. Catch you soon.
Thank you, Paul. That was awesome. So first of all, we'll get to the big one in a second. We agreed on a lot of things there in terms of like the Lando and Oscar pitting situation and the way that worked. McLaren looking to be back. The excitement of seeing Alpha do well in quali in the race. And Joe's start, but Paul liked the tire thing in quali.
Yeah. I mean, maybe Paul, just like he said, he's been in there watching the same thing happen for so many years now that maybe it was just something different and he enjoyed it. Now, he did then phrase it at the end with something that you're really pushing for, which is just want to see some jeopardy.
Yes,
just want to see
some strategy, something meaning something.
Yeah. Do you know what? On that basis, I'm not a fan of it, but I can see that they're trying to do something. But it like you say, it's not quite really hitting the nail on the head. I mean, he said he enjoyed the race, but then pretty much seemed to all the bits that he pulled out that he enjoyed were the last 10 laps that we said we enjoyed as well. So who knows? Yeah. Maybe Valtteri as well, running a bit better this week, put him in a better mood. But I liked all the bit at the beginning about what he has to do to get Valtteri the hell out of there once the race finishes. So
I mean, I wonder.
I do feel a bit sorry for him in a way, where it's like, so Valtteri gets packed onto the nice private jet with probably all the fancy, drinks and food, and there you go. And then Paul's just there with a little tear, just waving him off, and he has to go and get on his normal flight and fly back to London. But
stand there with the fire alarm going off in the wind tunnel. The building's on fire, but there goes Valtteri in the private jet.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, man.
We do thank you, Paul, for getting these recordings to us. It's awesome.
Well,
having
despite
your
the fact that
reports.
apparently we hassle him for it. So,
Well,
he loves it. He loves it. Look, he went on for 6.5 minutes and he loves it.
he has a great time. He's a great guy.
Although,
Speaking
Paul,
of things,
so
yeah, go ahead.
wait there, just 1 second, Paul, if he's listening to this. Didn't get too many travel facts this week, though, did we? Maybe we got leaving the circuit facts instead. So,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I can make my peace with that. That's fine. You're excused.
Uh,
Not excused for making another beer reference, but yeah, not forgetting that, are we? Right, Spa next week, as he said.
Awesome. Love it. It is my favorite track. I actually have listener JP is an artist in addition to many other things, and he made this amazing spa. I don't even know what to call it. It's a work of art. It shows the track on an elevated off the wood kind of carved fashion. And I sent him what was clearly not enough money for it. It was more valuable than what I could offer, but he did it for me anyway. And it is my favorite track. It was an easy choice for me to do. And so I am very excited. It's a great way to end before the summer break, as Paul referenced, and we get a chance to go there. So, Rob, you want to hit some of the highlights of the track itself?
Yeah, it's the long one. If you get a ticket here and you don't have a very good view, you are only going to see the cars go past you 44 times. 4.34 miles long. I think that makes it the longest on there. And that's shorter than it used to be. Back in the day, 1921 when it opened, 9.25 miles long. Basically went through public roads, went through villages. You could stop off and buy a pint if you wanted to, and then carry on going. 1947 they shortened it down to 8.7 miles, and then 1979 they cut it back down again. So they kept hacking at it. They basically kept making it faster and faster and faster. I think at that point it held the record for being the fastest open road circuit in the world. So yeah, and then since then, other than a few little tweaks with stop chicanes and all that kind of stuff, pretty much stayed that kind of iconic shape that you have hanging on your wall.
I love it. And there are some amazing corners. I'll let you hit the most famous ones, but I love the bus stop chicane. I love it. It actually was, I think, a bus stop back in the day. And so that's why they call it the bus stop chicane. But I love that chicane. It's like, to me, it sort of signals the end of the lap, right? Because it's right before you come back down the straight, and you're like, that's the last part. And in video games, like, that's the last thing you got to nail. And I love it. I love Blanchiment. I love Pouan. Jacques Villeneuve, when he was on this here podcast, told us about what it was like to handle those super high speed corners of Blanchiment and Pouan. And but the most famous ones are Eau Rouge and Radillon, right into the Camel Straight. I think Camel, right? Yeah.
Camel,
and so
yeah.
I will let you kind of highlight a little bit of their history.
It's just. I mean, obviously, we'll get to the point where it's tinged with tragedy, and we'll cover that in a second. But essentially, you come from the start-finishing line. You have the La Source hairpin, where you come down to basically about 1 mile an hour and have to. Those things must go full lock to the right to get around. I mean, so many cars run wide around there, just even trying to make that. And from that point, you essentially gun it, and you gun it to ridiculous speeds downhill. Down to the crescent where the Eau Rouge stream flows, hence the name, and then you take the corner, Radillon up the hill, up to the blind summit, where you try to pick a right point of the track to ensure that you come over the crest of that onto the Kemmel Straight. Now, it's been said that if you can take that flat out from the exit of the hairpin all the way down to the end of the Kemmel Straight in the braking zone for Les Combes corner, that's flat out for 1.25 miles.
Wow.
Just 1.25 miles with your foot just anchored to the floor. Now, something that I didn't know, and we should have asked Paul, because Paul mentioned it as his favourite/worst memory all at the same time, was Villeneuve and Zonta binning it big style, both destroying their cars in that weekend. And he was talking about kind of scooping up the car and putting it in a van. And it was because Villeneuve was he believed that if you could take it flat out, then those higher speeds generate the extra downforce that you need in order to remain flat out for the entire way. Now, one thing Paul didn't mention was apparently it was a bet between the two drivers. The reason it happened straight back to back is Villeneuve believed he could take that whole thing flat out and challenged Zonta to match him. And Zonta did match him, just not the way that he meant to match him by binning it. So as it sounds, it is very fast. a lot of elevation change, a blind summit. It is unfortunately connected with some issues in the past. They've had a big problem with the runoff area being too tight. So if you do lose it and hit the tire barrier, it just basically bounced you back like a pinball bumper straight back into the track. We had Antoine Hubert killed in 2019, and see, I wish he didn't have a name like this that I'm going to butcher, but Delano Van Hoff. Yeah, that was a young lad that lost his life this year in the rain, and that one actually wasn't really the corner. That was coming up onto the Kemmel Straight, but the visibility that should never have been allowed to run. It was just crazy, that one, but. The drivers love it. They love the exhilaration of it, but it is tinged with the a safety concern on that part of the track.
A lot more than just those drivers have lost their lives at Spa and at Eau Rouge, Radion, and actually just even recently, go back 2 years, it was 21, in that crazy rain weekend where they had the BS 2-lap race behind the safety car, but it was that quali when Lando had a massive accident there too, and he was really on it. He was trying to put his car somewhere it didn't belong in terms of up the pace, because he's got some serious talent, and he lost it, spun around. It was a horrendous crash, and one of my many favorite Seb memories. Seb pulled over, stopped to make sure he was all right, and then he literally stopped and was waiting for Lando to kind of give him a thumbs up that I'm okay in here. And once Seb got it, he took off and radioed back A to the team. He's okay. He said he's all right. And B, we shouldn't have been racing. It's too wet. And he'd said that the whole quali, that it was too wet, Seb had. So anyway, it is an amazing track. It is a dangerous track. It is fun to watch, though. It is just beautiful, and I can't wait for it. It'll be great. So it started in 1924, hosted non-championship Grand Prix, something we have talked about many times here and still never really gotten into enough.
We got a break coming up. We'll nail it in the break. Okay?
Will we? All right.
No, probably not.
Probably not. And so it was just it's been fun. The most wins at Spa: Schumi with 6, Senna, Clark, Kimi, and Lewis. Senna 5, those all 4. And then we have, of the current drivers, we have Max with 2, but 2021 really shouldn't count, and Rob's giving him 1.5 wins, and I agree.
I'm giving him 1.5 wins there because that.
I think 0.5 is even generous.
Yeah, probably. I give him half a win because they got half points. I think Fernando was right when he said, "If we don't have the opportunity to pass anybody, is it a race?" Yeah, it's what did we have last year? I didn't paste this in, so I'm on a different tab, Brian. But if you're frantically searching for it, I'm just going to read it out. We had Max 1 last year. A decent gap. I wonder if we'll see that repeated from Sergio to make it a 1-2 for Red Bull, with something I really don't see happening. Sainz popping a Ferrari up on the podium in 3rd place. That's not going to happen. We actually had Lewis and Valtteri did not finish last year. Collision damage. So hopefully those two stay out of trouble again this year.
Well, Lewis he touched with Fernando and he went up in the air and then his car was leaking things. And the year prior, Lewis had this situation. If you remember this.
The toilet, the one I went to, someone had dropped a crazy bomb in there. It was the worst thing ever. It's gonna haunt me for life.
Oh man,
Spa is the best. Even when they don't even go racing, we get things like that. So yeah. So what are you thinking, man? What are you thinking? What's your way too early podium preview for Spa-Francorchamps?
My way too early. Now, I'm basically going to be Professor Boring from the University of Boring, majoring in boring studies, by saying that it's a 1-2 for Red Bull because it's such a long track where so much of it is at full throttle, and if you're in a rocket ship at full throttle, I just don't see anything other than Max followed by Sergio to repeat last year's 1-2. And I think the hype is real. I think Lando makes it 3 podiums in a row. That's what I'm going to go for. I'm going to say the McLaren is going to run well here as well. We saw it had great pace at Silverstone,
right?
So. And it was today that I was worried about for McLaren going backwards, and I was wrong. So they go back to a pacey track. Yeah, I'm throwing Lando up there.
Man,
What about you?
what is wrong with us today? We're agreeing on everything. First of all, it has to be Max, right? I mean, like, we should just stop asking. I agree with you. The rocket ship that is the Red Bull and the amount of time and space that usually happens on this track where you can get stuff done. Checo, there's no way he should finish anywhere other than second. It would be pretty bad, honestly, if he doesn't get up on the podium, and especially second. And then you're right, it's best of the rest. And for me, I'm sort of the sample set of people I'm looking at. It's McLaren and Mercedes are the teams that I'm considering in that spot. And so I have 4 drivers to pick from. I'm going to put Lando over Oscar. And you could pick either of the Mercedes drivers, but I think the McLaren is fast, as you said. We saw it at Silverstone, so I'm going with Lando. I'm going to agree with you on the podium. That's the first time we've ever agreed on our predictions, by the way, which means something will happen and none of them will be on it.
And on that terrible disappointment, no.
Oh, man.
I think someone already uses that as a way to close the show.
On that bombshell. Oh, boy. Like we said, fantasy's calculating. So everyone tune in. Next week we will cover up what happened at Hungary Fantasy. I went a little crazy, just for the record. My team was Max with my double points, Fernando, Carlos, Pierre, which did not work well for me, Joe, which he went backwards because he started 5th and finished. Where did Joe finish today? He was... I have to keep scrolling. 16th, so that'll be a great point haul for me. And but I did have McLaren and Red Bull as my teams, so we'll see what ends up happening. But I'm gonna guess I had a poor week.
So I did. I binned Carlos Sainz to free up some funds, and I went double McLaren, picked up Lando and Piastri.
Oh wow!
With Max, Fernando, Piastri, Lando. Who was my 5th? Who was my cheap one that needed to make up the budget? I don't remember.
Yeah.
But with Aston and Red Bull as my constructors, because Aston are still just not enough. They're not worth enough to try to sell them. So they just kind of stayed in my
McLaren's
stayed
only
in my lineup.
11.8 million as of this week. It'll obviously go up, but anyway. All right, cool. Well, that's great. Spa next week. Fantasy. We'll do a full recap of what the scores were from this week. We'll kick off the summer of George as we get there for our summer break. We have some great guests that we're lining up, and we will get 100 seconds of DRS back for next week. So we look forward to that. Yeah, this is awesome, man. F1 is the best, even if the race was a bit of a clunker today. Rob's laughing. You agree?
So I am laughing because I was waiting for Nothing Burger, but I don't know why Clunker just tickled me. You don't normally break that. You don't really blah, blah, blah. You don't normally break that one out. So yes, yeah, looking forward to it. Great track next week. I hope the weather stays away so we don't get a repeat of the washout from a couple of years back. But I do like a little bit of rain creeping into Spa because it makes things spicy. So can't wait to be talking to you about what will hopefully be an amazing race this time next week.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Have a great week.